guys, Miss Sandlin here again. We're going to continue our read-alouds of Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. Quick recap from yesterday. Let's see. They made it to Camp Half-Blood okay. Mr. D was a real jerk about Annabeth being missing and possibly captured by the enemy. That's a problem. Who doesn't like Annabeth? Mr. D's... No one likes him. Let's see. Nico's excited about being at Camp Half-Blood. We haven't really seen much from Bianca. Talia and Percy have a little heart-to-heart. And Percy makes a phone call to one of our favorite people from last book, The Sea of Monsters, to his half-brother Tyson, who is a Cyclops, meaning he's only got one eyeball in the middle of his head. And he is working in the forges of Poseidon's underwater palace, creating weapons and things to help with the Olympians. And he also mentioned Luke's boat, the Princess Andromeda, is traveling to Panama for some reason. Seems a little weird, but that's all we know. So let's pick up where we left off. I was pretty miserable at dinner that night. I mean, the food was excellent as usual. You can't go wrong with barbecue, pizza, never empty soda goblets. The torches and braziers kept the outdoor pavilion warm, but we all had to sit with our cabin mates, which meant I was alone at Poseidon's table. And Talia sat alone at Zeus's table, but we couldn't sit together. Camp rules. At least the Hephaestus, Ares, and Hermes cabins had a few people each. Nico sat with the Stoll brothers, since new campers always got stuck in the Hermes cabin if their Olympian parent was unknown. And the Stoll brothers seemed to be trying to convince Nico that poker was a much better game than mytho-magic. I hope Nico didn't have any money to lose. The only table that really seemed to be having a good time was the Artemis table. The hunters drank and ate and laughed like one big happy family. Zoe sat at the head like she was the mama. She didn't laugh as much as the others, but she did smile from time to time. Her silver lieutenant's band glittered in the dark braids of her hair. I thought she looked a lot nicer when she smiled. Bianca D'Angelo seemed to be having a great time. She was trying to learn how to arm wrestle from the big girl who'd picked a fight with the Ares kid on the basketball court. The bigger girl was beating her every time, but Bianca didn't seem to mind. When we finished eating, Chiron made the customary toast to the gods and formally welcomed the hunters of Artemis. The clapping was pretty half-hearted. Then he announced the Goodwill Capture the Flag game for tomorrow night, which got a lot better reception. Afterward, we all trailed back to our cabins for an early winter lights out. I was exhausted, which meant I fell asleep easy. That was the good part. The bad part was I had a nightmare, and even by my standards, it was a whopper. I dreamed Annabeth was on a dark hillside, shrouded in fog. It almost seemed like the underworld, because I immediately felt claustrophobic, and I couldn't see the sky above, just a close, heavy darkness, as if I were in a cave. Annabeth struggled up the hill. Old broken Greek columns of black marble were scattered around, as though something had blasted a huge building to ruins. "Thorn!" Annabeth cried. "Where are you? Why did you bring me here?" She scrambled over a section of broken wall and came to the crest of the hill. She gasped. There was Luke, and he was in pain. He was crumpled on the rocky ground, trying to rise. The blackness seemed to be thicker around him, fog swirling hungrily. His clothes were in tatters, and his face was scratched and drenched with sweat. "Annabeth," he called. "Help me, please." She ran forward. I tried to cry out, "He's a traitor, don't trust him!" But my voice didn't work in the dream. Annabeth had tears in her eyes. She reached down like she wanted to touch Luke's face, but at the last second she hesitated. "What happened?" she asked. "They left me here," Luke groaned. "Please, it's killing me." I couldn't see what was wrong with him. He seemed to be struggling against some invisible curse, as though the fog were squeezing him to death. "Why should I trust you?" Annabeth asked. Her voice was filled with hurt. "You shouldn't," Luke said. "I've been terrible to you, but if you don't help me, I'll die." "Let him die," I wanted to scream. Luke had tried to kill us in cold blood too many times now. He didn't deserve anything from Annabeth. Then the darkness above Luke began to crumble, like a cavern roof in an earthquake. Huge chunks of black rock began falling. Annabeth rushed in just as a crack appeared, and the whole ceiling dropped. She held it somehow, tons of rock. She kept it from collapsing on her and Luke just with her own strength. It was impossible. She shouldn't have been able to do that. Luke rolled free, gasping. Thanks, he managed. Help me hold it, Annabeth groaned. And Luke caught his breath. His face was covered in grime and sweat. He rose unsteadily. I knew I could count on you. He began to walk away as the trembling blackness threatened to crush Annabeth. Help me, she pleaded. Oh, don't worry, Luke said. Your help is on the way. It's all part of the plan. In the meantime, try not to die. The ceiling of darkness began to crumble again, pushing Annabeth against the ground. I sat bolt upright in bed, clawing at the sheets. There was no sound in my cabin except the gurgle of the saltwater spring. The clock on my nightstand read just after midnight. Only a dream, but I was sure of two things. Annabeth was definitely in terrible danger, and Luke was the one responsible. Whew, man. Okay, we're going on to chapter 6. An old dead friend comes to visit. The next morning after breakfast, I told Grover about my dream. We sat in the meadow watching the satyrs chase the wood nymphs through the snow. The nymphs had promised to kiss the satyrs if they got caught, but they hardly ever did. Usually the nymph would let the satyr get up a full head of steam, then she'd turn into a snow-covered tree, and the poor satyr would slam into it head first and get a pile of snow dumped right on his head. When I told Grover my nightmare, he started twirling his finger in his shaggy leg fur. A cave ceiling that collapsed on her, he asked. Yeah, what the heck does that mean? Grover shook his head. I don't know, but after what Zoe dreamed... Whoa! What do you mean? Zoe had a dream like that? I don't know exactly. About 3 a.m, she came to the big house and demanded to talk to Chiron. She looked really panicked. Wait, how do you know this? Grover blushed. I was sort of camped outside the Artemis cabin. What for? Just to be, near them. You're a stalker with hooves. I am not. Anyway, I followed her to the big house and hid in a bush and watched the whole thing. She got real upset when Argus wouldn't let her in. It was kind of a dangerous scene. I tried to imagine that. Argus was the head of security for camp, a big blonde dude with eyes all over his body. He rarely showed himself unless something serious was going on. I wouldn't want to place bets on a fight between him and Zoe Nightshade. So what did she say? I asked. Grover grimaced. Well, she starts talking really old-fashioned when she gets upset, so it's kind of hard to understand. But something about Artemis being in trouble and needing the hunters. And then she called Argus a boiled-brained lout. I think that's a bad thing. And then he called her... Whoa, wait a minute. How could Artemis be in trouble? She's a goddess. Finally Chiron came out in his pajamas and his horsetail and curlers and... He wears curlers in his tail? Grover covered his mouth. Sorry, just keep going. Well, Zoe said she needed permission to leave camp immediately, and Chiron refused. He reminded Zoe that the hunters were supposed to stay here until they received orders from Artemis. And she said... Grover gulped. She said, how are we to get orders from Artemis if Artemis is lost? Hold on, what do you mean lost? Like she needs directions? No, I think she meant gone, taken, kidnapped. Kidnapped? I tried to get my mind around that idea. How would you kidnap an immortal goddess? Is that even possible? Well, yeah, it happened to Persephone. But she was like the goddess of flowers. Grover looked offended. Springtime, goddess of spring. Whatever. Artemis is a lot more powerful than that. Who could kidnap her? And why? Grover shook his head miserably. I don't know. Kronos, maybe? He can't be that powerful already. Can he? The last time we'd seen Kronos, he'd been in tiny pieces. Well, we'd actually seen him. Thousands of years ago, after the big Titan God War, the gods had sliced him to bits with his own scythe and scattered his remains in Tartarus, which is like the gods' bottomless recycling bin for their enemies. 2 summers ago, Kronos had tricked us to the very edge of the pit and almost pulled us in. Then last summer, on board Luke's demon cruise ship, we'd seen a golden coffin where Luke claimed he was summoning the Titan Lord out of the abyss, bit by bit. Every time someone new joined their cause, Kronos could influence people with dreams and trick them. But I didn't see how he could physically overcome Artemis if he was like a pile of evil bark mulch. I don't know, Grover said. I think somebody would know if Kronos had reformed. The gods might be nervous, more nervous. But still, it's weird. You having a nightmare the same night as Zoe, it's almost like they're connected, I said. Over in the frozen meadow, a satyr skidded on his hooves as he chased after a red-headed tree nymph. She giggled and held out her arms as he ran toward her. Pop! She turned her into a Scotch pine, and he kissed the trunk at top speed. Oh, love, Grover said dreamily. I thought about Zoe's nightmare, which she'd had only a few hours after mine. I've got to talk to Zoe, I said. Before you do, Grover took something out of his coat pocket. It was a threefold display like a travel brochure. You remember what you said about how it was weird the hunters just happened to show up at Westover Hall? I think they might have been scouting us. Scouting us? What do you mean? He gave me the brochure. It was about the Hunters of Artemis. The front read, "A wise choice for your future." Inside were pictures of young maidens doing hunter stuff, chasing monsters, shooting bows. They were captioned like, "Health benefits, immortality, and what it means for you," and "A boy free tomorrow." I found that in Annabeth's backpack, Grover said. I stared at him. I don't understand. Well, it seems to me that maybe Annabeth was thinking about joining them. I'd like to say that I took that news well. The truth was, I wanted to strangle the Hunters of Artemis, one eternal maiden at a time. The rest of the day I tried to keep busy, but I was worried sick about Annabeth. I went to javelin throwing class, but the Ares camper in charge chewed me out after I got distracted and threw the javelin at the target before he got out of the way. I apologized for the hole in his pants, but he still sent me packing. I visited the Pegasus stables, but Selena Beauregard from the Aphrodite cabin was having an argument with one of the hunters, and I decided I better not get involved. After that, I sat in the empty chariot stands and sulked. Down at the archery fields, Chiron was conducting target practice. I knew he'd be the best person to talk to. Maybe he could give me some advice, but something held me back. I had a feeling Chiron would try to protect me, like he always did. He might not tell me everything he knew. I looked the other direction, at the top of Half-Blood Hill. Mr. D and Argus were feeding the baby dragon that guarded the Golden Fleece. Then it occurred to me, no one would be in the big house. There was someone else, something else, I could ask for guidance. My blood was humming in my ears as I ran to the house and took the stairs. I'd only done this once before, and I still had nightmares about it. I opened the trapdoor and stepped into the attic. The room was dark and dusty, and cluttered with junk, just like I remembered. There were shields with monster bites out of them, and swords bent in the shape of demon heads, and a bunch of taxidermy, like a stuffed harpy and a bright orange python. Over by the window, sitting on a three-legged stool, was the shriveled-up mummy of an old lady in a tie-dyed hippie dress. The Oracle. I made myself walk towards her. I waited for green mist to blow out from the mummy's mouth like it had before, but nothing happened. "Hi," I said. What's up?" I winced at how stupid that sounded. Not much could be up when you're dead and stuck in the attic. But I knew the spirit of the Oracle was in there somewhere. I could feel a cold presence in the room, like a coiled sleeping snake. "I have a question," I said a little louder. "I need to know about Annabeth. How can I save her?" No answer. The sun slanted through the dirty attic window, lighting the dust motes dancing in the air. I waited longer. Then I got angry. I was being stonewalled by a corpse. "All right," I said. "Fine. I'll figure it out myself." And I turned and bumped into a big table full of souvenirs. It seemed more cluttered than the last time I was here. Heroes stored all kinds of stuff in the attic. Quest trophies they no longer wanted to keep in their cabins, or stuff that held painful memories. I knew Luke had stored a dragon claw somewhere up here, the one that had scarred his face. There was a broken sword hilt labeled, "This broke and Leroy got killed, 1999. Then I noticed a pink silk scarf with a label attached to it. I picked up the tag and tried to read it. Scarf of the Goddess Aphrodite, recovered at Waterland, Denver, Colorado, by Annabeth Chase and Percy Jackson. I stared at the scarf, I totally forgot about it. 2 years ago, Annabeth had ripped this scarf out of my hands and said something like, "Oh no, no love magic for you." And I just assumed she'd thrown it away. And yet here it was. She'd kept it all this time? And why had she stashed it in the attic? I turned to the mummy. She hadn't moved, but the shadows across her face made it look like she was smiling gruesomely. I dropped the scarf and tried not to run toward the exit. That night after dinner, I was seriously ready to beat the hunters at Capture the Flag. It was going to be a small game, only 13 hunters, including Bianca D'Angelo, and about the same number of campers. Zoe Nightshade looked pretty upset. She kept glancing resentfully at Chiron, like she couldn't believe he was making her do this. The other hunters didn't look too happy either. Unlike last night, they weren't laughing or joking around. They just huddled together in the dining pavilion, whispering nervously to each other as they strapped on their armor. Some of them even looked like they'd been crying. I guess Zoe had told them about her nightmare. On our team, we had Beckendorf and 2 other Hephaestus guys. A few from the Ares cabin, although it still seemed strange that Clarice wasn't around. The Stoll brothers and Nico from Hermes' cabin, and a few Aphrodite kids. It was weird that the Aphrodite cabin wanted to play. Usually they sat on the sidelines, chatted, and checked their reflections in the river and stuff. But when they heard we were fighting the hunters, they were raring to go. "I'll show them love is worthless," Selena Beauregard grumbled as she strapped on her armor. "I'll pulverize them." And then that left Talia and me. I'll take offense," Talia volunteered. "You take the defense, Percy." "Oh," I hesitated, because I'd been about to say the same thing, only reversed. "Don't you think with your shield and all, you'd be better defense?" Talia already had Aegis on her arm, and even our own teammates were giving her a wide berth, trying not to cower before the bronze head of Medusa. "Well, I was thinking it would make better offense," Talia said. "Besides, you've had more practice at defense." I wasn't sure if she was teasing me. I'd had some pretty bad experiences with defense on Capture the Flag. My first year, Annabeth had put me out as kind of bait, and I'd almost been gored to death with spears and killed by a hellhound. "Yeah, no problem," I lied. "Cool." Talia turned to help some of the Aphrodite kids, who were having trouble suiting up their armor without breaking their nails. Nico D'Angelo ran up to me with a big grin on his face. "Percy, this is awesome!" His blue feathered bronze helmet was falling in his eyes, and his breastplate was about 6 sizes too big. I wondered if there was any way I'd looked that ridiculous when I'd first arrived. Unfortunately, I probably had. Nico lifted his sword with effort. "Do we get to kill the other team?" "Well, no." "But the hunters are immortal, right?" "That's only if they don't fall in battle, Nico. Besides, it would be awesome if we just, resurrected as soon as we were killed, so we could keep fighting and..." "Nico, this is serious. Real swords. These can hurt a lot." He stared at me a little disappointed, and I realized that I just sounded like my mom. Whoa, definitely not a good sign. I patted Nico on the shoulder. "Hey, it's cool. Just follow the team. Stay out of Zoe's way. We'll have a blast." Chiron's hoof thundered on the pavilion floor. "Heroes," he called. "You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. Blue team, Camp Half-Blood, shall take the Westwoods. Hunters of Artemis, red team, shall take the Eastwoods. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. No intentional maiming, please. All magic items are allowed. To your positions." "Sweet," Nico whispered next to me. "What kind of magic items? Do I get one?" I was about to break it to him that he didn't when Talia said, "Blue team, follow me!" And we cheered and followed. I had to run to catch up and tripped over somebody's shield, so I didn't look much like a co-captain, more like some kind of idiot. And I think I'll stop us there right before they really get going in their Capture the Flag game. I can't believe Percy went to the Oracle without permission, and then he didn't talk to him. I kind of figured the Oracle would be raring to talk to anybody, being locked up in that attic all day. But he didn't see any green mist, or get any nods, or winks, or whispers, or nothing. That's a little fishy to me. And let's see, what else happened? Well, this Capture the Flag game, obviously. And that crazy dream about Annabeth. Percy and his dreams, they usually tend to be right. We saw that in the Sea of Monsters when he was dreaming about Grover being captured by Polyphemus, And we saw that in The Lightning Thief when Percy was dreaming about Zeus and Poseidon fighting. So I have a feeling that these dreams might be accurate too. So I'll leave us there. I'll see you guys tomorrow.